welcome to the Geek Legion of Doom. Now, I'm recording this video on New Year's Day and I thought it might be fun to give some box office predictions for 2014. Now, let me just say, this is going to be the box office financial predictions, not whether I think the movies are actually going to be any good or not critically, just whether they're going to make a profit or not. And according to IMDb, there's about 125 films that are kind of due out for release within the cinema, according to that site. I'm not going to go through all of them. I'm going to pick 25 of kind of what I think are the kind of the more bigger budget genre films, really, and I'll be going through them. Now, before we get into it, let me just explain exactly what it is I mean by doing this. So I'm going to be having a look at, do I think the movies are going to be profitable for the respective studios? So to give some clarification on that, let's just say, for example, a movie costs 200 million to make a production budget. To make money, the actual film needs to recoup essentially double that, because that 200 million doesn't actually sort of count money that is paid for, you know, by the cinemas and also the marketing budget. So a film really, if it costs 200 million, it has to make 400 million before it makes any profit, roughly speaking. So I'm going to be giving the movies three categories. Whether it's a fail, obviously it's going to come sort of way less than its kind of budget or what it needs to make any profit. Whether it's kind of so-so, and what I mean by that is it may make kind of a small profit, or it may just sort of make just under what it needs to make to sort of be profitable, but it's kind of be a kind of like a so-so film. It's not going to necessarily lose the company or the production house a lot of money, but at the same time it's not going to make a lot of money for the sort of the sort of studios. It's just going to kind of do middling, so to speak. And obviously, finally, I'm going to be giving the final mark, which is going to be a hit, which is going to be a decent amount of profit for each of the studios. So that sounds overly complicated, I know, but once I get started, it'll be very simple. So these are my personal predictions. I have no basis to kind of really sort of say these apart from what I think is going to happen. I'd love to know your predictions, and I'll probably look back at this video at the end of 2014 and see how many we got right. So we'll start off with number 1. 300 Rise of an Empire. I actually think this movie is going to fail financially. I don't think it's going to do enough to kind of really make any sort of decent profit. It hasn't got the kind of the buzz that the first one had. You've kind of seen it now. It doesn't really have Gerald Butler in it, obviously, so that it has a bit less star power. So I think it's going to be a fail. Number 2, Edge of Tomorrow. This one stars Tom Cruise, who is normally pretty bankable, but I think after Oblivion, it's kind of, that was a sort of lackluster sci-fi movie. I think this is going to be a fail as well, so I don't think it's going to be a particularly big hit at all. So I think it's going to make a loss on that one. Number 3, Lego the Movie. I think this is going to be a huge hit, so a massive win for the studio that released this one. So that's for the Lego Movie. Guardians of the Galaxy, and a film I'm personally really looking forward to. Now, in regards to money-wise, I actually think this one's going to be so-so. I don't think it's going to be a massive hit. I think it will probably be profitable just about, but not do any kind of anywhere near the numbers that we've seen in the kind of the previous Marvel sort of entries like Thor and Captain America and Iron Man and whatnot. Next up, we have Legends of Hercules. And there's actually 2 Hercules movies. This is the first one. This is the one not starring The Rock. And as you probably can guess, I think the one is going to be a massive fail. Next up, we have I, Frankenstein. And I'm actually going to say this one's going to be so-so. I actually think it probably will make its budget. Now, I say that because if you look at kind of films that are similar to it, the Underworld series and the kind of Resident Evil series, they actually do fairly well, even though they're kind of critically a bit mauled. And I think this is going to probably follow suit. I don't think it's got a huge budget, to be honest. This is why I say I think it will do so-so business. RoboCop. This one is a bit of a controversial one because a lot of people are actually pegging this to be a massive failure. I actually think it will do so-so, so I think it will probably make its budget back and maybe get a little bit of profit in there. Not be a huge blockbuster, but I think it won't make a loss. Next one we have Vampire Academy. I think this is going to be a fail. I think the kind of the vampire teen romance is past now, so I think this one's going to be a fail. And there's been a couple of B movies that sound very similar to this that have just sort of disappeared on direct-to-video. Next, that's going to be Pompeii, which is obviously a true life event based on obviously ancient Rome. I actually think this one's going to be a fail. I just don't see it clicking with audiences. I can't, I just don't see it making a profit. It's obviously a very effects-driven movie. It's got Kit Harington from Game of Thrones, but I think it's going to be a fail. Next up, we have Need for Speed. Now, controversially, I think a lot of people think this is going to be a hit. I think it's going to be a fail. I don't think Jesse Pinkman, or whatever the actor's name is, I don't know the actor's name, is a big enough star to kind of to really drive this movie, if you excuse the pun. And I think people just think it's a Fast and Furious rip-off, so I think it's going to be a fail. Divergent, another one of these kind of like young adult novels. This one is led by Shailene Woodley, who was cut out of The Amazing Spider-Man 2. I think it's going to be a fail. I don't think she has got anywhere near the kind of star power to drive this. I think it's going to be one of these kind of a bit of a over-fatigue situation with these sort of like young adult novels, so I think this one's going to be a fail. Next up we have Noah. I think this is going to be a hit, and I think it's going to be quite a big hit. So the kind of the religious, especially kind of the Bible Belt area in America, I think is going to be eating this one up, and they've kind of marketed it to look actually more like an action film. So even I'm kind of interested, and I have no interest in kind of in biblical movies, but I actually think this one looks pretty interesting. So you've got Russell Crowe starring in it as well. I think this is going to be a hit. Next up we have Captain America: The Winter Soldier. I think this one's going to be a hit. I think it's going to do better numbers than the original Captain America, and obviously you've got the kind of the run-off from the Avengers. So I think this is pretty much a safe bet to be a hit here. Next up we have Transcendence, starring Johnny Depp, a kind of AI movie. I think this is going to be a fail. It just looks a little bit too, kind of a little bit boring, if I'm completely honest. I just don't think it's going to click with made general audiences. So I'm going to say fail on this one. Amazing Spider-Man 2. This one I think is pretty obvious it's going to be a hit. I mean, Spider-Man is a pretty bankable character. He'll have to do something really badly to do to not be. I think this is probably a pretty much an easy win for Sony with that one. So next one, Godzilla. This one's going to be a controversial one. I know a lot of people are really looking forward to it, as am I. What it's going to do business-wise, I think it will be so-so. I think you'll probably see, actually, probably a bit less than maybe sort of like Pacific Rim on a worldwide basis. I don't think it's going to be a monster hit, and again, if you excuse the pun, I think maybe people will maybe feel like they've seen it before, so I don't think it's going to do huge numbers, but I think it'll probably still be okay. I don't think it will lose the studio money. Next up, X-Men Days of Future Past. I think, again, this is going to be an easy win. I think pretty much the X-Men are kind of a pretty good franchise now. I am starting to think maybe they may be kind of having too many of these movies coming out too frequently now. We'll see how it goes. I think it'll be a decent win for the studio, but I don't think it's going to do sort of superstar numbers, if that makes sense. And next up we have Maleficent, starring Angelina Jolie, a kind of live action movie from Disney. I mean, Disney now had a market. I think this one's going to be an easy hit because it's, there's pretty much, this is really got the kind of the market cornered, I think, for this particular type of movie. So I think it's going to be a hit. Next up, Transformers Extinction. A lot of these Transformers movies have kind of got panned critically, but they've made a lot of money. I personally think this one is going to be a massive hit and actually be the highest grossing movie of this year. I think it's going to be, the kind of Dinobots are pretty much going to cause that sort of interest, I think. And I think it'll be the highest grossing movie of the year and probably the highest grossing out of the Transformers franchise. So I think it's going to be a big hit for that one. Dawn of the Planet of the Apes. First film, okay, was fairly successful. I think this movie will be so-so. So I think it will probably make a little bit of profit for the studio, not massive amounts. I think you may have people may feel like they've maybe seen it before. Again, I'm talking about general audiences. I think it'll do okay, but I don't think it's going to do massive numbers. So so-so for that one. Next up is the other Hercules movie. This one starring The Rock, and I think it's going to be a fail. I think this is going to be one of The Rock's sort of few misses. I don't think it's going to do all that well. I think it's Brett Ratner who's actually directing this one. I just don't see it doing a particularly good numbers. I think it just doesn't look particularly memorable from what I've seen so far. Who knows? It's early to tell on that one, but I'm putting my money on a fail on that one. Next up, we have The Expendables 3. The Expendables movies in the past have been, they've been so-so, so that's not where we go with this one. They have made money, obviously, that's why there's 3 of them. They've never been a massive hit, though. They've made a reasonable amount of money, a sort of modest profit, but so-so money for number 3. Next up, another one I feel I'm going to be controversial on. and that is going to be Interstellar. This one, obviously, Christopher Nolan's new movie. There's a lot of love for Christopher Nolan, but I actually think this movie is going to be so-so. I don't think it's going to do the kind of the numbers and be as popular as sort of some of the other movies. Obviously, sort of the Batman trilogy, obviously, is the obvious example, but I just don't think this movie has got the kind of the wide range that it needs to have to kind of make a load of money. And then finally, the final movie that I've got on my list that I'm going to talk about is Jack Ryan, Shadow Recruit. And I think this is going to be a fail. I just don't think it's going to do any money. I think it's going to pretty much disappear without a trace. So that is 25 movies that are coming out in 2014, and whether I'm going to think they're going to be a fail, so-so, or a hit. I just repeat, this is a financial. I'm looking at, not critically. So I'm not saying these movies are going to be crap if they fail. I'm just saying I don't know if they'll make the money. So what do you think? What are some of your predictions? Leave me a comment. I look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.